I think that's one of the things that's most both exciting and daunting about being a composer today, is that in the past, it was much more likely that you had to conform to a particular stylistic trend that was dominating the times. And you could choose to be outside of that, but you paid a price for it, of course. But I think in the last, probably about the last 20 to 30 years particularly, what's happened instead is that there's been this kind of fracturing of trends, and there's lots of different stylistic threads, and many composers who fit no kind of thread, and now that's finally okay. So the exciting thing about that is it means we have, I think, more diversity and more range of expression than ever before, and it means that composers can find their own particular voice, and they don't have to worry about paying some of those prices for being outside the expected stream. But the daunting side of that is that now the onus is on the composer to really find a distinctive voice in the midst of all of that kind of cacophony, and I think that challenges the better composers and results in a lot of really terrific music. I think it's a great time for new music right now.
I would say that's starting to become true, but I still think composers have the hardest go of it of any of us, because certainly from a power perspective in the music business, they're absolutely at the bottom of the rung. They're below violas, they're below David. They're so grateful if anybody plays anything. And so while I agree with Jeff, it's an exciting time because there's less scorn and derision for writing a C major chord or whatever. By the same token, it's such a tough thing to write a good piece to begin with. And in a climate that isn't all that supportive of it, and that doesn't really value that particular kind of creativity, it values the creativity that you might find at Google, for example, but it doesn't value this particular kind of creativity. I think it's in many ways one of the hardest times for composers, and that's why, while it's true that the onus is on them to find their own voice, I think so few do. To be honest, I'm not sure that many are even looking for that. I think the music business has gotten so tough to get into. They're constantly wondering how they can just slot into this one little thing, if they could just get their foot in the door. And in the process of doing that, getting that footing, I feel like the voice is often left behind and very often never found again.
They always have to try and find something different that hasn't ever been done before.
Right, and of course it's not true. They don't have to do that, but there is a myth about that's true.
Some of the European stuff we played, some of it is so way out that even for me it becomes kind of ridiculous sometimes, because everybody is constantly trying to compete to find something that hasn't been done, something completely different, and everything from the use of electronics to external things
But of course, electronics is hardly new.
No.
David Stock, obviously our loving founder, said something to me many years ago that I've never really found an exception to. He said, everybody's all obsessed with new. He said, the last really new thing, really new, was Terry Riley's in C. It's like 71, is that right? Mm-hmm. And he said, name something that's been really new since then. And I can't do it. More complicated is not newer.
Yeah.
So
more complicated has replaced new.
Yes,
and
it's
the,
not
the
new
more difficult
because,
it is.
Yeah, that's
the better apparently it's supposed to be.
So
the most valuable thing is honesty, I think. Like the music that
right on.
That I think ends up connecting with me the most, and I feel like in general one could say the music that's on many levels the most successful is the most honest. So if a composer's honest path leads them to ingenuity, then that can be wonderful. Someone who's really breaking boundaries and trying things, if they're not new, then at least they're experimental. That can be great if it's honest. If it's done to try and serve some other purpose.
Yeah, just for the sake of being difficult.
Right. And by the same token, if someone is writing tonal music and they're doing it well and they have excellent craft and it's honest and it's what they really love, then that can be really, really beautiful. And one of the things that I think is great about this group, and it's a credit to Kevin's programming, is that you have Xenakis one week and Thomas Albert the next, and if you put them on a CD next to one another, you might be very jarring, but
or a Heart Key to Hoyby, the first concert.
Sure.
I mean, it's an enormous contrast between the first and second piece. It's just a,
Yeah. But there's the dedication to honesty, or at least what the group perceives to be as honest composing,
and
for lack of a
even if
better
it's
term.
even if it's difficult, even if it's technically really really demanding, like the Heart Key that we're doing today, when you get it right, it suddenly sounds totally amazing. When it just clicks, and that's what I think is a good, amazing composer is. Yeah, it's difficult, but when you get it right, you know you've got it right, and it sounds really really cool.